All right, hey there, Beltalotas and Inners. Since book tour and conventions are still on hold for a bit, I figured I'd bring book tour to you. So welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster Season 4, intriguing interviews with creative minds. A few years ago, I was seeing a ton of chatter on Twitter about a show I'd never heard of called The Expanse. At long last, I decided, all right, I'll check it out, and it's been a hard burn ever since. So tonight we're going to take a trip through the ring gates and discuss just what makes The Expanse such a thrilling, unpredictable show that never fails to keep the proto-molecule on its toes. First up on our panel is my friend and returning guest, Kelli Fitzpatrick. Kelli is an author, educator, and writer of sci-fi and fantasy. She won the Strange New Worlds 2016 contest for her Star Trek story, and she is currently writing for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game for Modiphius. Welcome back, Kelli.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here.
Great. Also on our panel is my friend JL Gribble, who is a freelance fiction editor, and she writes the urban fantasy alternate history Steel Empire series. Welcome, JL.
Hi, I'm already screwing this up. How is everyone?
All right, it's all good. In space, things happen. All right. And last but not least, Joey Yu is a published novelist and a best-selling nonfiction author in Asia. He was the 2018 recipient of George R.R. Martin's Terran Award, a scholarship funded by Game of Thrones author for the Taos Toolbox Master Writing Class. Joey is also the first bilingual writer commissioned by Riot Games for its League of Legends universe. Welcome, Joey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting us.
All right, all the way from Shanghai. All right, so a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions you have for the panel in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Now, a second heads up, and this is something I was telling the panelists before, I never do this. However, tonight, we will be discussing the show only as it pertains to seasons 1 through 5. We will not refer to anything that happens in the books beyond this point. No spoilers. So if you're going to comment in the chat box, and I hope you do, absolutely under no circumstances are you to spoil anything that might be coming. If you know about plot points or character developments that happen in the books beyond where the show is now, but have not been addressed in the show or haven't happened yet, please be respectful and keep them to yourself. Any violators will be locked in an enclosed room with Amos, who has permission to space you. All right, so we're going to jump in. All right, so what strikes me most about The Expanse, based on the books written by James S.A. Corey, is the scope of the series. You think you're watching one show, and then another element is revealed, and it turns out you're watching an entirely different show. So this is a question for the panel. What's your take, since we're all writers, what's your take on the long-term vision required to plot out a show like this? And I'll start with Kelli.
Oh, man. So it doesn't just have scope in one dimension, but there are so many parallel plot lines that are running concurrently within any given season that you have normally within a sci-fi story, you've got maybe the politics of like one faction or one country or one planet, and this is solar system spanning and universe spanning once we get later into the series. So I think it's impressive that we have political things going on, we have social things going on, we have scientific things going on, there are horror elements going on earlier in the series, and all of that stuff is running, concurrently, and they all have very long arcs. I don't know how they plotted all this out to be as excellent as it is, but I feel like every season has arcs that are complete and satisfying, and yet have I guess pulls into the next season. So they set up the next challenge, and it, in my opinion, it always raises the stakes. Like we have a proto-molecule, and okay, now we have like proto-molecule beings, and now we have full-scale war, and it just kind of keeps going up from there.
So, Joey, what do you think? There's a lot going on about what's your take on sort of the vision that the writers had to sort of lay out such a massive and mammoth ecosystem?
I think they totally know what they're doing with their technology. This is something that they have to have thought out, like right in the beginning. For example, and they reveal it bit by bit, right? Like in season 1, we saw the proto molecule, and then its function changes throughout the seasons. And it wasn't until season 3 that we saw that it was actually building the ring gate, which opens up portals to different worlds. That's like a huge turning point. So I would say that definitely the writers like knew that since the beginning. And so every time a technology gives you a new function, right? Like you find out new things about the tech. Everything changes, from the politics to economics, and characters and all the different factions fighting each other, and that's good guys become bad guys and vice versa. That's definitely, and I'm kind of betting that later on, before the end, we'll see even newer use of the currently existing technologies.
Mm-hmm. JL, what about you? What's your take?
I think that this show is a great example of how you can base a television show off of a book series and have it work out for the best, because it's already rooted in such a solid story structure. And then even beyond that, the book series was based on a role-playing game. So it's been, a storytelling adventure from the very beginning.
Wait, is that right?
That is right.
I didn't know that.
A certain character who dies in season 1 was literally a player who couldn't join be part of the game anymore.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah. So
who was it?
So just the overarching, just having that base of storytelling from the very beginning allows the writers and the creators to just go in multiple directions. Without getting into the trouble that some TV shows get into, where they, get crazier and crazier, but don't always have like an end destination in mind.
Mm-hmm. So the next question. So I've actually spoken to some engineers about this. So sci-fi, whether it's space opera or military sci-fi, is often filled with spaceships and interstellar travel and lots of action. But I can't recall any sci-fi show where the realities of physics play such a critical role throughout the entire narrative. So just talk to me a little bit about that. So Joey, what's your experience been with it?
It was really fresh. It was new to me. I mean, I grew up watching Star Wars, which was, like not super hard sci-fi-ish. Star Trek is much better, but The Expanse is like way out there, and I don't think we have any other show that's on par with it. And to me, as a writer, it's really fresh, and we can tell that I think they have like 4 or 5 main writers, including the 2 novelists, and I think they're there to provide like tech support and everything. And so coming from China, the whole sci-fi scene in China right now, there's a huge wave of writers, going for the hard sci-fi direction, and this is a show. It's like the #1 favorite show in China right now in terms of sci-fi, and people are big.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
And do you think that's at least in part because of the adherence to, of course it's fictional, but the physics seems real.
It is like if I remember correctly, I think like midway season 1, there's one guy who I think Joe just said it, some guy died, right? And you could see like blood flowing out of his neck, and that thing was so real, like it was just, and the space battle, you didn't hear any sound. It was like bing bing bing, and then the guy's head was gone. And also the whole battle between the ships, it looks real. Like you couldn't tell up from down, left from right. It was just bullets everywhere. It was amazing.
Okay, Kelly, what about you?
Yeah, it feels very realistic that this could be humanity's future. It feels much more NASA than it does, in an imaginary timeline. Like I believe that this could be, humanity's future. Maybe alien influences aside, but all of the actual like space tech that Joey's talking about, it feels like, it's very real. And I like that they base some of the problems that the heroes have to deal with on a regular basis come from the realities of minute things malfunctioning in space equating to everybody dies. Like tiny little things go wrong and like suddenly like everybody is panicking and everything stops so that we can fix this tiny little thing. You know, there's times when they're at Illis and their orbit is degrading and they have to come up with all this crazy stuff just so they don't fall into the planet's gravity well. And you know, that's just one example of a major plot issue where they're literally just fighting physics. They're fighting gravity just to, you know, to make it.
Yes, I mean, for me, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it. And JL, I want to hear from you as well. You know, there was a few moments where, you know, I forget which season where it was, and I forget, one of the Rocinante members said, you know, I told you to lock that down, right? And the panel falls open and tools are flying around. Like, you know, if you're traveling at 30,000 miles an hour and it's a screwdriver floating around and you're locked into your chair, there's not a whole lot you can really do about it except duck, right? I mean, that's like for real, right? JL, any thoughts there?
Yeah, so watching SpaceX launches and landings is a big deal in my household, and watching the Rossi do the vertical landing on Illis in season 4, pretty much just like the SpaceX Falcon engines are landing like in present day, just makes it even more realistic to me. Like, yes, I'm watching a sci-fi show that has, you know, the alien protomolecule, but beyond that, all of the stuff that originates in our solar system, except for their engine drive, which is run on efficiency. And that's a quote from the authors too, when asked what powers their engines. That's the only explanation they've ever given. Everything else is so incredibly rooted in science that it's very easy to see all of this happening in essentially the near future.
I mean, I thought one of the, and I'd like to hear what you guys think, is the fact, so we all kind of know the setup, right? You've got Earth over here, you got Mars over here, and the belt is in the middle. But the gravity is different in each one of those environments. And it's not like in most sci-fi shows where they're like, oh, it's a breathable planet, and you just go down to the planet and either you have a spacesuit or you don't. Here, you go from one planet to the other, the gravity is going to kill you. If either you can't physically, your body just physically can't tolerate it, or right, they pump you full of drugs just to keep your, you know, to keep your systems intact, or your fucking heart will explode, right? I mean, just that sort of, you know, that realism, for me anyway, it makes me feel like they're not just like whooshing through the universe, right? They're like, you know what? Just being in a craft that's hurtling through space at these incredible velocities, just that alone could kill you. Forget about where you're going, what else you might encounter when you're out there, right? And even some of the details, like when they're in season 1, where like, you know, they're on where are they, you know, with the belters, right? And the water pipes are leaking. Mushrooms are literally growing. It's mold. That's like spores are growing from leaky pipes. But meanwhile, we're like, you know, we're blasting off to other solar systems and they're worrying about whether the pipes work. I mean, you don't see it. I mean, you know, you see it sometimes in shows like, oh, the flux capacitor isn't working, or the, you know, I need warp speed now, we're all dead, right? It's very exciting. But this is like, no, we're actually gonna like really be dead in a really horrible, not cool way, like at all.
But they do that with the soft sciences too, because, you know, in Star Trek and Star Wars, they go to the planet, they can breathe, whatever. Right. And then, you know, it's a running joke in the Stargate universe where every planet looks like Canada because that's what they were filming. But in The Expanse, you know, the one planet that we've seen in the show so far, it is not like, it's breathable, but biology still evolved differently and it wants to murder you. You can't eat anything, you can barely drink anything. And so that's, you know, a great twist to have in the show as well, that, you know, even the biology, the soft sciences are rooted in reality.
Yeah, right. The fact that they're literally like capturing massive ice chunks and breaking them down for water, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love, is that a lot of sci-fi, you know, portrays, you know, general daily life as either sort of ideal or heavily dystopic. And I feel like The Expanse kind of captures this like it's uncomfortable, but like humanity has adapted. Like there's a lot of things that the spacefarers and belters in particular have to do just to be able to inhabit space. Like they have to use the little juice needles to be able to travel, you know, at high warp, and it's very hard on their body and very uncomfortable and potentially deadly. And you know, Naomi has to go through the whole gravity drug process, which is also horrible. Like they're only eating mushrooms on the station. Like all their food is just mushrooms. Like there's a lot of things that are kind of like, okay, this is maybe not an ideal existence. It's not like the flashy awesomeness that a lot of people think of when they think of going to other planets. And I think they capture that a little bit with the dream of Mars. Like they wanted to terraform Mars into this, you know, paradise, and it doesn't exactly go as planned.
So that's kind of leading into my next piece. So the Expanse is also it's far more than just military sci-fi or even space opera. It weaves an intricate socio-political ecosystem that, to me at least, is as much a character as the Earthers, the Martians, and the Belters. So what do you think about the world building? JL, what's your take on it?
I love that even within the familiar of Earth. So I'm biased because I'm in Baltimore, and I have a soft spot for Amos to begin with. But the fact that we do actually get to see the future version of Baltimore in season 5 was an absolute delight. But I love that we finally got that kind of discrepancy between Avasarala's world and where Amos comes from, even within Earth. And, you know, not to mention the differences between Earth and the Belt, whereas the people, you know, scrounging to live on the Belt are honestly not that much different from the people at the very bottom scrounging to live on Earth, which we saw when Bobby went wandering through New York.
I mean, for me, I mean, I don't, and Joey, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. You know, the Martians say, you know, about the Earthlings or Earthers, you know, you had a paradise and you destroyed it, right? I mean, you had this ultimate, right? You had limitless food, limitless water, limitless space, and you turned it into a cesspool. And now now you want to take over Mars so you could do the same thing to us. Right. So Joey, what's your, and of course, and the Belters in between are like, you're both fucked. What are you talking about? You're both killing us. What's your take on that?
Yeah, the whole world building of the Expanse, it's very relatable to us and as modern audience. You know, like you have Earth on the one hand that's abundant with resources, but they're fucking it up. Then you have the Belters that are, you know, they grew up in very light G, and they don't have water even, and they have Mars is like terraforming the planet failing, and we're seeing sorry, excuse me, like I think the cool thing is that we're seeing all these world building from different characters. Like, you know, in season 1 we see it from the Canterbury's crew, and in season 2 Bobby is introduced, and we see more of Mars, right? And we see from like Dawes and just one guy, Fred Johnson. So it's like the Tycho station thing. It's very exotic and also relatable. Like we can see how all the power play would happen. So that's the awesome building goes like there are natural conflicts that exist even without the characters. So you know that, you know, Mars would be fighting Earth for wanting to be independent, and you see that Belters, you know, are mining for all these paradises, but they want to, you know, be on their own. So the characters are kind of thrown in these fault lines, crack lines between cultures and these geopolitical conflicts. They have no say in the beginning, but gradually it's just like, you know, playing Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. Once they level up, they start having more say. They can start influencing world building and itself, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. So
just as an offshoot of that question, so to me anyway, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, what fascinates me most, I think, about the Expanse is if you take away some of the space battles, which are brilliant and thrilling, they're amazing, and the characters themselves, which we're going to talk about them in a minute, is that there's no real heroes here exactly, right? Earth sort of has their own, you know, this sort of sense of entitlement about what they deserve to control. The Martians on the other side are like, well, you know what, fuck you. This is kind of our time to be independent. but they're not so noble themselves. You know, they still got, as it's said often, their foot on their throats of the Belters. And the Belters, who are essentially, you know, coal miners, right, living in horrific conditions for 100 years, have said, fuck you both. I've had enough. We're going to take what we think is ours. And within all these factions, you see characters who try to act more virtuously or with more nobility, and some of them are just savages, and everyone else is kind of somewhere in between. And you can sort of understand the points of view of each group more broadly, but no one really, there's not too many angels in this world. What do you guys think?
Hey, Russ.
Whoever just said, hey, Russ.
It's me.
Don't.
Can I say something?
No, you can't. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, even, you know, our heroes are kind of accidental heroes, which is great because it means that they can screw up. Like Holden screws up a lot. And that makes for a more interesting show. And, you know, even the people who are in power, you know, they're not heroes either. You know, Fred Johnson is, you know, still trying to make amends for stuff that he did ages ago. And that means that, you know, I guess his heart's in the right place, but he's still never going to be trusted by the Belters because he's still an Earther. Honestly, except for Drummer, you know, Drummer can do no wrong, but everyone else, you know, it has baggage and has a history. No one's, you know, they're all still burdened by where they come from.
Yeah, sorry. And Stephen, if you have any comments, put them in the chat box. We'll get to them.
I think it was Holden in season 1, and it was on rewatch that I noticed is that he sent a message to everyone saying that Mars was behind this, right?
Yep.
And he totally kind of escalated the whole geopolitical war because that was, you know.
Because he actually thought he believed he was doing the right thing. And he actually seems to be one of the few characters who consistently, although not always, tries to do quote unquote the right thing. Whereas doing the right thing and what is the most practical thing often seem to come into conflict with really dire consequences.
Well, and that's what I like, that the characters have to operate on whatever information they have, but it's not always clear to them, like, is this the right decision? And what are the consequences of this decision going to be down the road? And a lot of those decisions come back to bite them. But if you look at what they had to go on in the moment, like, it's a decent decision, but I like that the narrative doesn't paint it as clearly this is the right path. Are you going to choose the right path? It's more like, here are my 3 options and they all kind of suck for different reasons.
Yeah.
Like, well, what am I going to do?
Well, look, take it. What is Naomi? She has a very big secret. She called an audible about what to do with that, you know, missing missile, and she didn't tell anybody. And did she do the right thing? Maybe.
Yeah, and Drummer has a similar situation with letting Marco go in I think it's season 4.
Boy,
that one comes back in a major way.
You know, that's the one you kind of file under. Ruh-roh. That was not good. All right, so I want to keep talking about the characters themselves. So many of them start off one way, but as we get to know them, we realize that they're far more complex than we realized initially. So talk to me about your favorite characters and how your perception of them may have changed over the course of the series. Let me start with you, Joey.
My favorite character, aside from Drummer, of course, was Amos. He's cool. Like I have sympathy for unique characters, like, you know, kind of mentally impaired in some way. He's just cool. Like, he's pretty awesome. I think by season 3, we know that once he shows up, right, like things would get resolved one way or another in some way. Like he's kind of like a shield of Holden. Like he protects him. He protects the protagonist, and he's good in fighting.
Yeah, what does he say? Why do I always get shot?
Yeah, exactly.
Get shot a lot, right?
So the only discrepancy that I found about this character would be that, like, right in the beginning, he was kind of like a follower of Naomi. Like whatever Naomi says that he would do. But that was a history that hasn't been revealed. You know, because by season 5, we went back to Amos' past, right, in Baltimore, and we know that he was kind of like a sort of like half gangster and very he has his own life, and he was kind of like half boss there. But then why would he become Naomi's tail? That was a part where it hasn't been talked about. That
I'm hoping they fill that in. I don't know if they will. As a side note, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and I'm going to go back to the rest of you. So when we were down in Baltimore, it was great to see it, but I have to admit, for the amount of time that we spent in Baltimore with Amos, we didn't really learn a whole lot about him.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think it would have taken a whole lot, because he's a man of very few words, to sort of just, because he's referred to as like, oh, weren't you some sort of mob boss? We never got to see or hear anything about him that was specific to what that life might have been. Now we get glimpses of it. I just wanted a little bit more texture there, but that's just my take on it.
So I know that we're not talking about the books, but I think that that is one instance where the show almost does a disservice to people who haven't read the books, because there is a novella specifically about Amos growing up in Baltimore that explains kind of that offhand comment, weren't you a mob boss? Amos is not his real name.
Right.
Yeah, Amos was the mob boss. Amos was not that mob boss though. And so it's enough of a throwaway line that if you're just watching it, you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. So I understand why people get confused.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more. So characters JL, while I'm with you, so talk to me about a character that started off one way and over the course of the show revealed themselves to be maybe a little bit different, that sort of either you resonated with the most or that you look forward to the most. Just who's one of your favorites? Talk to me about that.
So Christian Avasarala is probably my ride or die of this show. And it's fascinating because she is a woman who has power throughout all 5 seasons, but the source of her power changes. And from the beginning, when she's kind of the power behind the throne, I think she's a lot more effective than when she becomes the head of Earth herself. And that's where it kind of falls apart.
She didn't handle that well.
No, she didn't handle being the actual power and having to kind of like be more accountable for her actions. And so that was just a fascinating character journey for me to watch. I love her and I adore her, and I'll just listen to that woman talk forever, but it's
she's the best.
Yeah. But she definitely runs into problems, even when from the outside it looks like, well, she's achieved all this stuff. Why are things going wrong now?
Yeah. Kelly, how about you?
It's hard to go wrong picking any character here because they are all just so phenomenal and all like well developed. I'll say Drummer is my favorite character because I think she's just amazing to watch, and I think she's somehow just like herself but more intense as the show goes on. Like I don't really think she changes who she is, but we get to see just how strong she is she gets more responsibility and starts becoming in charge of more things, and you
see all that rage that simmers within inside her,
and that's
so much to like not let it take over her, right?
And that's a good point here, that like all the female characters in this show are really like well-rounded, well-developed human beings and not like archetypes, but they're allowed to be angry and in power hungry and things, and it works. And I really love that in the show, that the women are not stereotyped. I really love Bobby's character.
Oh, she's great.
I didn't like what they did with her in season 4, where she like joins this crime organization. I didn't buy that. Like she like sacrificed her career for the right thing, and then she's like, yeah, I'll go help you like steal some stuff.
I don't know that. I mean, I hear you. I didn't like that she fell there, but I could see it because I know a lot of ex-military, and
that's where I was going to go with that. As someone who's a former, as a character who's a former service member being kind of failed by their former employers, I totally bought it.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask. So I want to talk to you about.
Wait, did you let Joey tell his favorite character?
Yeah, he started off. Yes.
Amos.
Oh, Amos. That's right.
Right. Yes. 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 Hold on. So, Kelly, you touched on it a little bit, and I want to expand on it. So certainly, I would say in contemporary sci-fi, at least, and other fiction as well, the ideas of inclusion are far more overt than at any other time I can recall. Talk to me about the casting in the show and how well or not it does in terms of showcasing a truly diverse population in the universe, in that universe. Kelly?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to speak on all dimensions of that, but gender representation is something that I care a whole lot about, and this show probably does it better than any other show I've seen, where they just have a wide variety of people that are different genders and different nationalities and different backgrounds who are just killing it. Like, all these actors are incredible. And the show overall, I feel, is just very diverse and representative of a lot of different people groups. We have, polyamorous relationships going on. We have, same-sex relationships going on screen, and they're just there. They're just there, and it's not an issue, and it's awesome.
And
so,
that's kind of what I wanted to touch on. I want to know what you guys feel is that, a lot of sci-fi, not all sci-fi and fantasy, but there's an overt attempt to sort of address social issues and bigotry and whatnot. In this show, it's just everyone's just who they are. They don't even talk. They don't talk about color. They talk about, like there's the belt is. It's more about a socioeconomic issue rather than race or religion for the most part, right? It just doesn't even get mentioned. It's just doesn't really matter what gender you are. It doesn't really matter what color your skin is. It's just utterly irrelevant. Everyone's just trying to make their way in that universe. What, Joey, what's your take on it?
Totally. I think they did an awesome job there. They don't even have to explain, what your backgrounds are, and they definitely the factions, the characters are divided by their by the faction of the world building, Belters versus Mars versus Earth. There's some there's tension there. But in terms of employing people of different races and we also see strong female characters, and it's awesome. I think it was in season 2 there was an Asian character of what was his name? Like a botanist, the guy who takes plants, right? Oh yeah, Prax. Yeah, he was the one that's trying to rescue his daughter, and that's something that we could feel from modern audience, Asian audience, because he's trying to rescue his family, and that. Asians have the same for families. So we have high sympathy for fathers who want to rescue the daughter and stuff. So it's totally there, and it worked. Yeah.
Well, so as a father myself of two kids, that storyline really hit me where I live.
Yeah,
for sure. So let me talk. So this I thought was interesting, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. So despite the enormous amount of violence, fear, antagonism throughout the Expanse, the notion of love is actually a core tenet woven throughout this extensive narrative. And love is both an emotion and it's an action. So which relationship most resonated with you personally in regard to love expressed on the Expanse? And we'll start with JL.
So the friendship that develops between Amos and Pax was probably one of my favorite things.
Yes.
About the show, because it's like, oh no.
Yeah, you froze a little bit. You okay? All right, so we'll come back to you when you refresh. So Kelly, go ahead.
I'm gonna say Drummer and Ashford, the kind of they're frenemies relationship. I know that's not romantic love, but I still feel like they developed a really close bond by working together for kind of the same, the same goal.
They had, what an incredible amount of mutual respect they earned from and for each other, right? This wasn't just given freely. Like they fought for that respect on both ways. Because when Asgard is first introduced, you're thinking, oh God, here we go. Here's another power-hungry prick who's just coming to steal power out from under her. But really, it's just that he just at the time just didn't believe that she was up for the challenge. And he wasn't, and he may not actually have been wrong. I think his heart ultimately underneath was probably in the right place. Didn't come across that way to start, but I thought
and he was wrong that she wasn't up for it.
well, right. It's just that, but that's what he kind of came in with the attitude of he believed that wasn't true, or he feared it wasn't true, and he says, "Well, I'm the wizened, guy. I have the experience. I'm really ready for this, and you are not." And it turns out that she, in some ways, I think, and I don't know if you feel the same, she's obviously as fierce as they come. But being a captain at that level, at times I actually felt she wasn't a little over her head. And just because maybe not enough experience to see the scope of what was at stake. But it was incredible, especially how they both had the chance to sort of serve for each other. Joey, what about you?
I think JL dropped out.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll come back in.
Yeah, so I have a strange one. Something that speaks to me the most isn't between the main characters, but more about Holden's background, because he had 8 parents, and then we don't see this kind of thing in any of the films, right? And so I think it was like he has the genes from 8 people, right? But his mother, like there's one woman, the character, and
really?
it's one scene.
Did I miss that completely?
Yeah, they talk about it once when he goes back to Earth.
Yeah, I think it was season 3 or is it season 2? When Sarah went to Earth, went to find Holden's mother,
right?
And and there was maybe like a photo. Did she meet all his parents? Did she meet all 8 of them?
No, only a few of them, but they talk about the fact that he has a lot of genes.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. I
that
watched
was
twice.
To me, it was fascinating. It was awesome world building. It was awesome characterization. Like you can kind of tell how he has this innate love for everyone, and that's kind of that's his value system. That's how he becomes who he is. Like on his ship, he has people from Mars, from the belt, and everyone, right? And that translates through him, and I think that to me that's fascinating.
You know what? I hadn't caught that. I'm glad I'm going to have to go back and look at that. I completely missed it. All right. So I want to move on to some other stuff, and we'll come back to JL once she reconnects. So seasons 1 through 3 contain, for the most part, one very large arc with many sub arcs within it. But then we get to season 4, which pivots a bit, and there's been mixed feelings about the team's trip to Illis. What did you think about that particular storyline? And we'll start with Joey.
I like it. I mean, we've been seeing space battles for 3 seasons, and if it keeps on going like this for 6, I mean, it works either way. Like it will work because they have awesome writers, but it's also cool to see things grounded a little bit. Like you see an alien, and that's the whole point. Right? I mean, what's the point of opening up the ring gates if you don't actually go to one planet? And I guess the only thing I was kind of hoping for would be that they could go to a second or third planet and check out all these different planets and see what they're like. But the whole storyline that happened there on that planet, what's it called again?
Illis.
Okay. It was tension filled, it was compelling. We have one bad guy, like I don't even remember his name, like
Mertry.
Yes. Actually, I love that one bit. It was a throwaway line when Abasarala was getting into it with what was her name? Nancy Gao, and she's like, "Well, they're calling it New Terra," and she's like, "Who the fuck cares what it's called? The problem's still the problem."
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But the whole story it's to me it's really awesome. Especially like the from the art perspective, like all these towers and what they found, and that kind of veers back to remember in the beginning in season 1 we had this Miller thread where he was a detective trying to find clues, trying to solve a mystery, and I feel that in season 4, right, they're trying to find out what's going on with this planet. In the end, I think Miller came back again and turned into like a silicon-based creature. So that to me is really awesome. It's fresh, it's new. So to me it worked. So
JL, we'll come back to you in your previous questions, but right now we're talking about how we feel about kind of that somewhat side storyline in season 4 when they went to Illis.
Okay.
So Kelly, so what about you? So we kind of came out of the mega, space opera battles, and we kind of went down to this planet and spent a good portion of the season down there. How did what was that for you?
I love season 4 because I love ancient alien artifacts and the mystery aspect that Joey was talking about. So like, I just wanted them to like start pushing all the buttons on these like towers and figuring out how they all work, and they work, like they turn on and stuff happens and it's cool. And I really I was moved by the plight of the Belters who established themselves on the planet on Illis, and they don't want to leave because it's their only place. I could have done with less Mercury running around shooting people. Like, I feel like that was maybe overdone. They established really quickly that that's the kind of person he was. But I do think it's hilarious that Amos calls him something different every time he addresses him. So he's like, Mercury, Murphy, every time he says his name, he intentionally calls him something that's not his name, which is
one of my favorite moments of the whole series. And it's a throwaway moment, right? At the beginning of season 4 somewhere, Amos and Mercury step right away, and Amos basically says, it's gonna come down to blood between us, right? At a certain point. And at the very end of the series, where the two of them in a room and they're going and they're verbally sparring, and Mercury clocks Amos in the face and bloodies his mouth, and he kind of goes like this and turns around, and his face is like this, and he's got wild eyes and the blood from his mouth, and he's like, "Thank you." I'm just like giving Amos permission to be Amos. I'm like, that is the moment of moments. Loved it. So JL, what about you? About season 4? Talk to me.
So the book 4 of the series was probably my least favorite book of the series, but season 4 of the show has been my favorite season of the show so far. And I think it's because the adventure on Illis, which you said was kind of like almost a side quest, but I think it's actually a microcosm of what our solar system is facing now.
That's how I felt about it.
Yeah. So it's, it's everything that is going to happen exponentially as people, do the gold rush to all of the other planets and get caught up in the economics and who can claim it. Is it the people who claim it from their comfy offices on Earth, or is it the people who touch down there first? Or is it the people who have the biggest guns, which is kind of what Mercury decides to
However, what I think I don't know if it gets lost, but the guy really did have a point, right?
Which guy? Mercury?
Yeah.
What was his point?
Well, the fact of, so they're coming down, to under, what is supposedly, reasonable terms, and someone blows his ship out of the sky and kills 25 of his people, just bloody murders them out of nowhere. And it's true, that actually did happen. He's got a right to be pissed off. I'm not saying that he then went, I think, as Amos said, at the end of the day, you just like to kill people. And I think that's right too. But his rage and his suspicion was well-founded. I mean, how would you feel if you came down and someone blew up your ship and killed, not just anywhere, in a new planet, in a new solar system, and murdered 2/3 of your team before you even sat down? You might have a little bug up your butt about that one. But again, he certainly went off the deep end and he loved doing it. Okay, so we got to move things along. We have way too many questions to get to, so I'm not going to be able to get to them all. And just as a heads up to the folks at home, if you came in a little late, if you have any comments or questions for the panel, put them in the chat box and we'll get to a few. So what we got to do is we got to address the elephant in the room, which it being Alex Kamal. So we know that the actor was accused of some pretty bad sexual impropriety during some conventions. And it appears, I guess we don't know for sure, but it seems fairly likely that his character was killed off for that reason. Now, the great irony for me, at least, and I definitely want to hear what you guys think, is that while Alex was, kicked off the show because of the actor's bad actions, is that the character served as the moral center of the Rocinante crew. So how did you think about how they handled that situation? We'll start with JL.
I think that, like, if you take the actions of what happened in the show in isolation from that, I do appreciate that, you know, every time they do these high G maneuvers, you know, they run a risk of somebody dying, and it finally happened, which I think took you know, a lot of guts for the showrunners to do. Conveniently, they got rid of somebody who they may have already wanted to get rid of for whatever reason. And also conveniently, they kind of got rid of the most replaceable character. You know, you can always find somebody else to pilot the ship. You know, you can't necessarily find somebody else to be the, you know, the heart of the ship, which Holden kind of does, or the people who have made the ship, you know, intrinsically theirs, from like an engineering standpoint, like Amos and Naomi have. So I'm sad because I'm gonna miss Alex, but I'm really impressed that the show went in the direction to just even kill somebody off and have the science and the very real physics we were talking about have an actual cost in the show.
Joey?
Yeah, I think they, from the creative standpoint, I think they handle it pretty smartly. About like, you know, in the end, this is just one example that we get to know how hard it is to distinguish, you know, to separate the actor from the character. And there's no way, like, I think they had this internal debate, like, you know, whether they should give him like a final scene, like a farewell scene, whatever, but they never gave him that chance. The only thing that we saw was a plate with the name Alex on there. So that's the way they tackled it, to separate the character from the actor. And I also heard that in the last scene of season 5, when they were sitting in the lounge, right, everybody getting together, Everosa would give him speech. I think they digitally erased Alex, so you see this empty chair there, and they left that empty chair there just to show that, you know, it's gone. And it's I think they handle it pretty neatly.
I mean, his last line was, you know, that was one hell of a ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kelly, what about you? Talk to me about this?
So I'm a pretty strong proponent of believing women when they share these stories, and I think that they did the right thing in dealing with the actor. I do appreciate that they allowed the character to die saving one of their crew members.
Absolutely.
You know, and I don't think Alex as a character would have wanted to go any other way. He's a veteran of the Martian Navy.
Nope.
He knew the risks in flying, and he chose, like, they talked about this, like, this is going to be very dangerous, but we're going to go save Naomi. I think it all things considered, you know, it's very sad to lose that character, because I thought he was a great character, but I think they handled it as good as could be.
Okay, so we have to move on, but because JL kicked out, I want to go back to you so we have a chance to talk about your earlier thought. We were talking about relationships.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it before about how the show takes a very, you know, they don't really regard a character's gender or ethnicity in terms of how the character is represented. And so I love the fact that one of the kind of purest relationships on the show is between two men. You know, Prax and Amos develop a bond because Prax has a goal and Amos decides to help him with that goal. And one of my favorite little, like, background details that, you know, people on the internet take screenshots and dig these things up, you know, later in the series you get a little screenshot of Amos's, like, phone with all his contacts, and one of them is my best friend, and that's Prax.
Really?
Yes,
And
I saw that. Yes, that was very cool.
I also love that in that same shot, Holden is captain, but Naomi is the boss. So
Yes.
that says a lot too.
Yes, absolutely. Those are great moments. All right, look, there's a lot more we want to get to, but I have to move on to some other things. We're going to come back after season 6, and we're going to have to finish this conversation. But as we always do on the show, it is time to spin the wheel. On this wheel are 7 possible categories, which I created especially for this panel. Wherever it lands is what you get, and the categories are Avasarala's Admin, Famous Amos, Star Swap, Thunderdome, Ringgate Explorer, Ripley's Blue Goo, and yes, Boss Man. All right, Kelly, you're up first. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. What do we got? Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows. All right, Kelly, you got Thunderdome. All right. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so the Rocinante crew and friends end up in a Mad Max situation where Amos and Bobby Draper are pitted against each other in a Thunderdome-style fight to the death. Who wins?
Oh my goodness. That is like almost a perfect match between them. Oh, I don't know. I think my money's on Bobby, but I feel like Amos wouldn't fight her. Like he would just be like, I'm not doing this shit. Like she's not the enemy.
All right, fair enough. Okay. Oh, and for those at home, I hope you checked out my Rocinante shirt came in today, and I showed the guys before. This just came in today too. It's a little one. I'll have to get a bigger one, but here's my little model Rocinante. Okay, so enough of that. All right, so Joey, you're up next. You ready? All right, here we go. What do we got? We got, oh, Star Swap. Oh, this is another good one. Okay, so you can assemble your own 5-person crew for the Rocinante with one member each, at least, from the Expanse, Star Wars, and Star Trek franchises. Which ship, who's the captain, and who fills out the crew?
5 people, right?
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow, this is tough. Darth Vader.
Totally
yeah,
not what I was
not?
expecting.
So yeah, he's the captain.
He's the captain?
He's the captain, yes. And Spock from Star Wars.
Yes. Oh my gosh, those two are gonna fight each other.
I'm loving this so much.
And drummer.
Yes. This is an
Wow.
all-star
All right,
team, Joey.
That's 3. You got 2 to go.
From any of the 3 franchises, right?
Yes.
So and Chewie from Star Wars.
Nice.
Yeah, and probably we need Ashford there.
Mhm.
Ooh, okay. And which ship?
Rocinante. I like Rocinante. You know, imagine Darth Vader on Rocinante. It would be like emerging out.
It would be hard to see Vader on the bridge of the Enterprise, right? Oh, Joe, I gotta tell you, you made my day with it. With Vader as the captain. I fucking love it. Okay, JL, you're up next. You ready? All right. And we got, no, we already did that one, so we gotta pick another one. Hold on. No, God, no duplicates, no duplicates. All right. There we go. All right, Famous Amos. All right. Okay. Famous Amos is a popular brand of chocolate chip cookies. If Amos Burton was running the company, what do you think the cookie slogan would be?
These are those cookies.
Those cookies, all right. Oh, that's good. Okay, so we're gonna go to our advice column. All right, so we're all in the writing business. What's the best and worst piece of writing advice anyone has ever given you? JL.
The best advice is to manage your expectations with every project. Shoot for the stars, but be okay if you hit upper atmosphere. Because it's tough. It's a tough business. The worst advice is that you have to write every day to be a real writer, because I certainly don't write every day, and I've been cranking out a book a year for the last couple of years. So, you fit your lifestyle around what you can do, and stay healthy while you do it.
All right, very cool. Joey, what about you? Best and worst?
I think the best one would be from Nancy Kress. It's our instructor from Taos that Kelly was a part of. And she said that just follow your heart and, write it whatever they feel like. Because it was one class, it was one piece of the writing that I produced that she felt was a little bit different from the way that Western writers, would tackle. And then she said that you just do whatever that you feel would be your foundation. I think that would that totally made my day. The worst piece of advice, probably write every day. way that I could do it. Yeah, that's that.
All right, and Kelly.
I would say the best piece is to write what you want to know. Like we often hear like write what you know, as in like write the thing that you have experience in, and that can be helpful. But I also think that especially as science fiction writers, like our job is to write the world that we want to live in and to project that into literature. So cultural consciousness has a chance to assimilate that and digest it and have something to look at. And I would say let's see, the worst piece of advice would probably be like to start slow and like gradually work your way up in your career. Like just go all out and shoot for what you want. Like you never know what's going to happen. And sometimes amazing things happen.
All right, right on. So we've got a couple of minutes. So we're going to take a couple of questions or comments from the audience. What do we got in here? Let's see. Okay, so this was resolved in the Outer Space Treaty. It says that space belongs to no one, just like Antarctica. No nation can claim anything. It's for all mankind. That means by law, you can't mine stuff out there because you don't own the land beneath it. So, all right, JL, this one came directly to you. So what do you think about that?
I think that treaty is going to last as long as the politicians aren't being paid by companies to decide otherwise. By companies that have an interest in getting their hands on those resources.
All right, let's see what else. We got a couple of comments here, but they're not really questions. Okay, well, I got a couple more. I'll go through one more question that we didn't get a chance to talk about. All right. So Clarissa and her mods. So I don't recall, and just because I don't recall, it doesn't mean I wasn't there, being a moment where the show really took quite enough time, at least to me, where they discussed the role of mods in this particular society and how they were used. I mean, did I miss that? Or was it just kind of, I mean, when I rewatched it the second time, I paid more attention, but I don't recall a moment where they said, well, you know, we're using mods for these particular purposes, and this is how it's filtered out through the ecosystem. Did I miss something?
They show Miller in season 1, who has the pointy bits on his spine,
right?
Because he was raised more of a ward of the state, so he got crappy mods to help him adjust to growing up in low atmosphere. And so I think that Clarissa's mods that give her like extra human powers are kind of like an expansion on that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything about that?
I think they kind of imply that like they're not completely totally accepted in all contexts and that they can potentially make people dangerous, but I agree they're not really explored very much.
All right, Sharon, I thought maybe I missed something. Okay, so before we wrap up, we've all got stuff to share, so I'm going to share my screen right now. Bear with me for a moment. And all right, so you guys, we seeing this? We good?
Yep.
All right, Kelly, what do we got here?
Awesome. So my latest story is in this book called Turning the Tide, which is an anthology published by the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. This is a charity anthology that benefits the World Literacy Foundation, and it has stories in it by all the names that you see on your screen. And it's tie-in fiction. So we each wrote a story tied into a public domain property, and I chose 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne because it's one of my favorite stories. And so my story takes the world of 20,000 Leagues and pulls it 150 years into the future, where we are meeting the newest captain of the Nautilus 7. Her name is Jetta Calreth, and she has to decide how she wants her captaincy to be defined while facing some pretty serious threats from climate change and also some terrorists in their underwater civilization. So I really enjoyed writing this story, and you can check this out. All the proceeds from this, like I said, go to charity, so it's a good cause.
Awesome. And where can we get it?
You can go to the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers website, and also you can just search it on Amazon.
Great. Okay. So, JL, what do we got?
That is the next book in my Urban Fantasy Alternate History series. It is coming out later this month. It is book 6 in the series. The first one is called Steel Victory. Everything is available in major outlets in ebook and hard copy. Steel Justice is currently available for pre-order. It is, I'm getting back to two of my favorite characters, Tori and Kane, who are mercenaries who are hired to be the bodyguards to a character who very much does not need a bodyguard except for status reasons. And along the way, there's a murder mystery and crazy robot dogs. So it's good times.
All right, awesome. All right, Joey, I apologize for the small image, but it's the best I could do. So what I know you write a lot of stuff in Chinese, but this is in English, correct?
Yeah, it's a short story for League of Legends. It's a tie-in story. So League of Legends, it's an esports game, and they are expanding their universe. So they hire writers from all over the place to write their IPs. And so this story is based on one of their main characters, main champions, where you can play on computer. Called Akali, and her whole background. It's very short. It's like 10,000 words, and you can read it online. So if you search the bow and the kunai, bow being the weapon bow, and the kunai is like a Japanese blade.
So the bow and the kunai.
Bow and the kunai. So it's free for reading. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Whoops. Sorry. And as for me, since you're obviously a fan of space opera with action, humor, and suspense, I'll encourage you to check out my novel, Crossline, about a modern-day space pilot thrust into a parallel Earth, caught between rebellion, Armageddon, and a desperate fight to get home. And if you're a fan of Miller, which I know that you are, I'll encourage you to check out my own sci-fi noir featuring my intergalactic private eye, Angela Hardwick. Her first mystery, Crackle and Fire, came out last year, and I am thrilled to announce that the second mystery in the series, Fractured Lives, will be out in print in September via Creasiate Press and is available now in ebook on pre-order. In this adventure, Hardwick is hired to investigate a college freshman and galaxy design prodigy undergoing what appears to be a nervous breakdown, but may in fact be linked to an urban legend known as the Scarlet Raj, who may or may not be initiating a play to amass power throughout the realm. All right, so that's what we got for our panel. Hang on, I'm gonna X out of this in a second. For some reason, I always seem to screw this up. Okay, here we go. All right, so I wanna thank Kelli, JL, and Joey for a great show. I had a great time. Like I said, we gotta come back after season 6 and keep this going to fill in a lot of the gaps. And I wanna thank everyone who's watching. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro. I've only got one more show for the rest of the summer. So until then, I'll see you all next week. Take care now.